On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we discuss the true meaning of a bad loss.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we are discussing one of the things that I have been ranting, have been raving, have been warning you all about. We talk about a game that was, if you took everything that I warned Lightning fans about over the last, I mean, it doesn't even have to be the last 3-4 years. It could be the last 2 months about, or even the last 2 weeks about this Lightning team. It all came full circle last night, and somehow the Lightning still came out on top in a game that they did not even not have one sliver of deserving of winning this game. I'm talking about last night's game against the Ottawa Senators, in which the Tampa Bay Lightning won 4-3 at home after coming off a relatively good road trip on the West Coast, one that I said it was going to be very important. And, you know, you would have liked to have seen Tampa go ahead and sweep that entire series out in California. They won 2 out of 3. That's fine. I'm completely fine with that. They ended the road trip with a win, and because this upcoming stead at home is going to be very important for them, and they start off their homestead against division foes, a team who I said on the Atlantic Division preview episode, a team I said who, if you close your eyes and don't come out and play a certain way, this team is going to beat you. And they're really not going to have to do much. And really what it comes to down to it with Tampa is, and I tweeted this last night, is that this team makes mistakes or doesn't do things the right way. And I think what makes it more frustrating is that they repeatedly do this on a nightly basis and have been for pretty much the inception of this podcast. And they have, and I'm going to be, maybe I'm a little bit overcritical, or maybe I'm being a little bit cruel. But the fact of the matter is that this team has been overly lucky during the regular season and at certain points during the playoffs. I guess one playoff series last year, if you really want to look at it, where this team was very lucky to have opportunities still after some of the things that we saw them do in this game, in that series. And that is the series against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round, in which they inevitably did win that series in 7. But last night was just, you know, just when you think, and maybe there's some Lightning fans that feel that maybe I'm being a little bit overcritical, and that's fine. You're entitled to the way you feel about this team, but you cannot sit there and argue with me with a straight face and say that what we saw last night came out of the blue. If you do, then you haven't been watching this team for a long time. I'm sorry. Listen, I'm not here to criticize other fans, but the fact of the matter is that this Lightning team looked like a bottom-dwelling team last night. And somehow, and this just goes back to my point about them being overly lucky over the last couple of seasons, because listen, you're going to have to come up and be lucky every now and then. Well, for the Lightning, it's more than just every now and then. And to be as successful as they have in recent years. And boy, were the Lightning, were they lucky last night to have even had this game. They're lucky that Alex DeBrincat didn't have an incredible night last night. Alex Brinkett, who we all know is very capable of scoring 40 goals in a season, is very capable of not only hitting you for one, but also two. You have Brady Tkachuk there on this Ottawa team as well, and former Lightning player Matthew Joseph, where I even said myself before the game, I said he's going to hurt us tonight, and he did. He did in one of the ways that we have seen him hurt other teams when he was wearing the blue and white in Tampa as well. But listen, this team, I think one of the things that is very frustrating about last night, and I predict because I've watched every single Lightning game since we started this show back in 2020, February of 2020. This is our fourth season. Is this team going to learn anything from this? Wow. I firmly, and you could tell from the post game pressers. I'm sorry. Listen, from some of the statements that I saw that were made by some players and some yes, I mean Steven Stamkos after the game, he made it very clear when Tkachuk had that breakaway with seconds left, if that would have gone to the back of the net, you know, that would have resulted in him getting another stick from the bench. And yeah, that I mean, that's a regular reaction that you should have as a captain and should say, but you should be more mad than that. I feel like certain, I feel like the majority mood with this game, and John Cooper made a comment during his presser saying that this was a crazy game. No, this was not a crazy game. This was a terribly played game by your team. I don't see any frustration. And yeah, maybe John Cooper had some sort of meltdown in the dressing room prior or during post game or during the game between the breaks, between the periods. But I understand that John Cooper maybe wants to keep things in house, doesn't want to bash his team in the media. But if there was ever a time where you were going to bash your players and hold them accountable to the public, because there are other coaches in the league that do that almost on a nightly basis that are not shy about it. And then there's other players that you really don't hear about at all. If there was ever a time where everyone was going to agree that, okay, that was deserved, it would have been this game. And quite frankly, it's a little alarming that we don't see more anger or maybe some embarrassment. And maybe now that we've had almost 24 hours to kind of mull over it, maybe in the next time, if the media could talk to players prior to their game tomorrow against the Hurricane, maybe we'll hear something about that prior, or if the Lightning go out and lose that game in spectacular fashion. My best bet is probably not, but I would have to say, if there was ever a time, and we had this conversation on a prior episode, if there was ever a time where Lightning fans should be concerned or worried about the team, it should be now. Ironically, after a win, because that was by no stretch of the imagination, or there is no debate, no point that you could bring to me where you could say the Lightning deserve to win that game. And that was we talk about bad losses here on the show from time to time, and it's there's the old saying, a bad loss and a bad win. This was a bad win, and I was kind of asking myself a couple of weeks ago after the Lightning lost, when are we going to see a very bad win? Because I can't remember the last time I've ever seen one in sports. Well, we saw it. But yeah, the Lightning fans, I know I'm always worried about this team, especially just how they play, how they handle, how they respond on a nightly basis to poor performances or mistakes that they have made constantly. I am worried for this team because you have three very good teams coming into your building over the course of the week. Carolina tomorrow, Buffalo this weekend, and then you got Connor McDavid, arguably the best player on the planet right now, coming in your building next Tuesday. All I'm saying is that this Lightning team needs to get it together, or this team, we spoke about last week how it's very important to get themselves going on this West Coast trip. Well, it's very important that the Lightning play good hockey over the next week, or they are going to be utterly embarrassed. Embarrassed. They're going to be the laughing stock of the NHL, because that game, if you didn't check Twitter, you should check to see some of the comments that were made, and they were all deserved. So we'll talk more about this game. I mean, the big elephant in the room, the power play, just absolutely brutal last night. We'll talk about that. But first, I want to talk about this episode's sponsor, and that is BetOnline. Now, BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs with football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel and go ahead and hit us up on our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Locked_Lightning on Instagram. And please go ahead, hit subscribe if you're following us on YouTube and also on an audio platform. So we are available everywhere. So that's Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, wherever they're putting out podcasts, we are there. Go hit that notification button. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you are there. If you're watching us on YouTube, all our social media handles are down below. So go ahead and do that and hit up a comment below. Let me know. How did you feel about last night's game? Do you have a dirty taste in your mouth? Because I do. I was almost embarrassed to be someone that roots for this team last night, because I don't like to use that word a lot. Maybe I do a little bit more. Maybe I'm a little bit more cavalier with that than maybe I should be. But that was an embarrassing game. I mean, an embarrassing display of offense last night by Tampa, who is supposedly and really should be. I mean, given all their indifferences on the roster and their lines, they should be still one of the top teams in the league offensively. But man, it just seems like this team gets worse and worse and worse on the power play. And I have never seen a coach or heard a coach such as John Cooper, who, listen, I have really held off on the criticism on Coop. I still think he's a phenomenal coach. I still think that there are things that this team needs to work on, glaring issues that need to be addressed that haven't been addressed this season, last season. Pick your season. Not much has changed. Yeah, this team buckles down around the playoffs, and that's great. But let's not play a certain way to where it's starting to become a nail biter, where you're starting to look at this team and be like, is this team going to make the playoffs and be a first round bounce? Because the way this team played last night, if the playoffs started tomorrow, I would say this team would get swept. Now, we are in the second month of the season. So yes, there is a lot that could be corrected. There's still a lot of time left for this team to get it together. But from someone who has seen and watched this team over the last couple of years, it's starting to become a pattern. And eventually, and as you saw last night, and as Brian Ingblom continuously said last night, and Dave Randorf echoed that as well, and this is obviously every team is going to do their homework, okay? Let's not sit here and applaud the Ottawa Senators for doing something, catching up on stuff that the Lightning literally do every single night. The one thing the Lightning, you could always count on the Lightning being, is creatures of habit. And these cross-ice passes, these passes to each other on the zone entry, these offensive rushes during the power play on the man advantage, every team sees it coming. It's nothing new that this team has been doing. This isn't something that the Lightning just started, a couple of weeks ago or this season, and you got to sit there and be amazed how well the Ottawa Senators picked up on it. No, this is something that the Lightning have been doing for years now. And yes, it worked out during 1920, 1819 as well. And that's what made them one of the big bad Lightning, and definitely contributed to them winning back-to-back cups and going to a third straight final. But you got to change it up. I've been talking about it on this podcast for the last 4 seasons. Change it up. Just because it works 3 or 4 times doesn't mean it's going to keep working. Okay? Eventually teams are going to catch on to it, and they did last night. Okay? Like going to Stamkos on every scoring opportunity. That's great. Listen, that is something that has worked. If it ain't fixed, don't break. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is how worked up I am. I can't even think of the sayings. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But teams are gonna, as you could clearly see early on, Ottawa made it very clear they were not going to get beat by Stamkos last night. And Anton Forsberg played phenomenal. And I don't know if I hinted about it, and maybe I did on the crossover episode with the Ottawa Senators guys, Locked On Senators guys. I spoke about how Anton Forsberg is very scary to me. How he is a goaltender. Yes, is he in the conversation for top 3, even top 5 goaltender in the league? Absolutely not. But with the way the Lightning play and the way, because this Senators team, they're not necessarily one of the more talented teams in the league. They're on the up and up. But what they do is they play smart. They play smart. They catch on to things, and you saw that plain and simple last night. And the Lightning did not adjust a single damn thing, and that resulted in going for one for 8 on the power play. Listen, I've spoken about it on this podcast numerous times. Okay, going maybe 2 for 5, 1 for 3. That's excusable. I get it. I don't expect this Tampa team, or any team for that matter, to execute on to come up with goals on every single power play. But going 1 for 8 with Steven Stamkos, with Braden Point, with Nikita Kucherov, with Ross Colton, the names might not be popping off the page as you go down the list of players on this team, but you still have guys who could execute. And I tweeted it off the Sergachev because I knew it. If I wish there was a prop bet for this. I knew last night after the Sergachev goal to make it a tie game, I knew it that they weren't going to make more of an emphasis on the D-man core taking shots. Because why do that? It seems as though the Lightning have the inability to change things up. If something works in a game, they'll be like, eh. No, they would rather set up Stamkos and Cooch and sometimes Point. And by the way, we'll talk about that in just a bit. Friggin' Braden Point. That goal was unbelievable. And what a great pass from Cooch on that. We'll talk about that to actually end the show, because I want to end this on a good note. But that was an abysmal display of offense last night. I've spoken about it numerous times on this show, how things have not reached rock bottom for this team yet in terms of their inability to fix their mistakes, to capitalize on things during the game, the adjustments made in the middle of a game. They don't do that. You don't see that. You don't see in-game adjustments from this hockey team. You don't. You really don't. And if you're at home watching this on YouTube, or on your phone watch this on YouTube, or listening to us on an audio platform, and you're shaking your head no, go to our YouTube page, comment below, let me know when we saw an in-game adjustment from this team, because I'm curious. Where was there a moment in this game? Because listen, in my opinion, if I'm a player on Tampa and I see Sergachev, that shot works. It may not work every single time, but it resulted in a goal. But yeah, Sergachev had 4 shots last night, and that's perfect. That's great. But get the other guys involved. Okay? Get Cal Foot involved. Get Chernak involved. Okay? And I get it. Chernak was a little banged up last night. But when you, and By the way, Cal Foot had no shots on goal last night. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. And that goes back on the coaching right there. That goes back on the coaches where they have to look at the stat sheet between periods and say, we got to get Footy involved. Okay. Especially on a night when you're missing your top gun defender in Victor Hedman, you got to get all those guys as involved as possible. Listen, if the Lightning would have played the way they played last night, because listen, I'm going to say it right now, basing your offense of basing your offensive production just off of Nikita Kucherov, who we know is a notorious slow starter. Steven Stamkos, who, yes, is having a fantastic season to start, but I would like to see more diversity in the goal scorers. And Braden Point, who we're starting to see him start to get things going. Great goal last night. But that is a recipe for disaster if you have really none of your defensemen really getting involved. If we would have had every single defenseman last night at least have 3 shots, I guarantee you, there would have been a lot more goals scored. Okay, because the chances were there. The chances were 100% there. But on the other side of that coin, when you're turning over the puck constantly, you're digging yourself a hole. I mean that 5-on-3, that 5-on-3, and I should have tweeted it out. I don't want to be that guy. I really don't want to be over negative and over critical, especially in game, and jinx this. And I'll admit I was also saying, if they score here, I'm going to get a ton of crap from all of you, rightfully so, on Twitter. But I knew as soon as the Lightning went on the 5-on-3, they were not going to score. And then on the other side of that, Matthew Joseph scoring a breakaway on that on the shorthanded. I mean, that was just talking about full circle for him. I'm sure he enjoyed that, scoring against his former team. But yeah, that was just one of the all-time worst performance by this hockey team, and change needs to happen. In-game adjustments need to happen, or it's not going to get any better. We're going to have these up and down performances where the Lightning are going to beat up on the low-level teams, and rightfully so, they should win those games, and then have to squeak ones out against the mid-level teams. And if that's the case, guess what? The Lightning are going to make the playoffs. Because guess what? If you're just squeaking wins out and points out of mid-level teams, guess what? The chances of you beating the top teams in the league, like an Edmonton Oilers with one of the best 1-2 punches in the league with Draisaitl and McDavid, if you're playing like that, not only are you going to get embarrassed, but you're not going to win those games. So wrapping things up here on the show, just going to end the show on a good note. Braden Point, what a phenomenal goal last night. I've watched over 1,000 hockey games in my life. I've never seen a player skate up the ice like that with that speed and get a one-touch pass like that. And that is the perfect combination of talent, puck handling, skill, vision, ice vision, all of the boxes that you could check off when you're evaluating a player offensively. 2 players, actually. And that's what you got there, these guys. But I feel like, and I know I said I was going to end the show on a good note, but that was the game tying goal. I mean, and we spoke. I mean, I could spend, and maybe I'll talk about this on the next episode, because I do want to start ramping these up a little bit more. I do want to start putting out maybe 2 a day, here and there. But yeah, I mean, just follow it. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. I think that was the perfect goal for the perfect situation, given that Stamkos scores a goal to tie it up. I mean, Killorn scores a goal to tie it up on basically, listen, like at that point in the game, the way the Lightning were playing, they did not deserve to even be remotely close to having the lead or having a chance at the lead. But Killorn scores after cleaning up the puck down front, and then Vasilevsky completely disappears, has no idea. And I've spoken about this. I'm not going to get into this. Um, it is very well documented on the show how unaware at some points in the game Vasilevsky is, and how they said on the broadcast that Vasilevsky was a good puck handler. He's not. He's not. Yeah, just because he could pass the puck and clear it and all that, that doesn't mean he's good with the puck. When he is constantly and it has resulted in goals in the past. This isn't the first time that this has happened where he has turned over the puck and kind of just had an absolute mental lapse behind the net, and it resulted in a goal. I mean, this was probably one of the worst ones I've seen in a while from him, Claude Giroux, and then that leads up to the point goal. And I have to say, I would have been shocked. I was shocked then. I was very shocked by this goal, but it was the thing that the team needed um, after what happened, and then that 5-on-3, just not doing literally anything on that, and then on top of all of that, the Senators having as little shots as they did, um, Braden Point, showing that clutch factor, and yeah, that was I believe that was his fourth goal of the year. Excuse me, his fifth goal of the year, and that's phenomenal, and it did come on the 5-on-5, which is strange to me, and it seems though, and I'll look at the numbers, and I'll calculate them and put them together, but I feel like this team scores more power play goals, which kind of inflates their numbers because they're so bad. Really, if you dissect every single power play, the Lightning are not a good power play team. The percentage is very misleading. Um, but yeah, I just want to see more 5-on-5 with this team. I think this team is I need to see more goals out of them. 5-on-5. I need to see more power. I need to see more of everything from this team. I really do, because like I said, it seems as though the Lightning pick and choose when they want to turn it on. And I have an issue with that. And you saw that as clear as day. If you didn't see it before, you saw it as clear as day last night. It seems as though they only get things going when their back's against the wall. And yeah, they lured one could say they kind of lured Ottawa into some false confidence there by playing as badly as they did, and then eventually snatching the lead from them. But against a better team, against a team that is also very experienced, a team like a Hurricanes, that's the Lightning will be coming up against tomorrow night, a team like Edmonton, a team like a Calgary and Dallas, a team like a Boston, St. Louis, those teams aren't going to let you get away with that. And the Lightning basically they need to pick up as many points as they can because they're playing a ton of home games this month. And that's where they got to start to build some sort of momentum. And we have yet to see that from this team. Right now, if I had to rate them, not even looking at their record, 6-4 is very misleading. And if you just based more, if you just looked at the performances at certain times, especially last night, excuse me, I would say that this team is I would rate them 20 out of 32. And I don't think that's a harsh assessment of this hockey team. So hopefully we get a better performance, a better performance out of the gate, especially from this hockey team, as they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes tomorrow night, excuse me, at home. Another team who I told you, who, they're what they may lack in a big time scorer. Yeah, they do have Svechnikov, but they're a team that plays smart and plays for the most part the right way. So we'll see what Lightning team we get. Do we get Dr. Jekyll or will we get Mr. Hyde tomorrow night against the Hurricanes? And we'll be talking about that as things unfold. I'm thinking about doing a segment, releasing a podcast during the second period or at some point during the game, talking about the game thus far, and then a post-game recap pod afterwards. So as always, please subscribe to the pod. So if, once we move along with that, there'll be news dropping about that. as well as, stuff on YouTube. We'll do little shorts here and there. So make sure to hit that notification bell as well on any platform that you are listening or watching us to. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.